Every bag of commercial chicken feed you buy bleeds money from your homestead. Money that leaves and never comes back, locked inside a price you do not control and a supply you cannot guarantee. There is a living biological engine built from your kitchen waste and a single square foot of scrap lumber that can cut that cost dramatically within 2 growing seasons. The average small flock of 6 laying hens burns through a 50-pound bag of commercial feed in roughly a month. Run that number out across a full year and you're looking at the cost of roughly 11 bags, a number that climbs quietly every season as feed prices hold high and your birds keep eating. And here is the part the feed industry never prints on the label. Roughly 40% of that bag is filler. Grain hulls, synthetic binders, and cheap rendered byproducts that your hens tolerate but do not thrive on. Your birds need between 16 and 20% usable protein in their daily diet to maintain strong shells, steady laying, and healthy feather regrowth. That specific fraction, the protein fraction, is the most expensive part of every bag you're forced to buy. And it is the fraction this system targets directly. The feed companies have known this for decades. And that's when the real story starts, because the solution was already sitting in your backyard long before the first commercial feed mill opened. The United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, documented the protein conversion capability of insect larvae as early as the 1970s, which meant the data on zero-cost biological feed alternatives existed in the academic record long before most homesteaders ever heard the words black soldier fly. The feed industry grew anyway because convenience cost money, and the money flowed to the distributor, never back to your coop. This system was built for the person with a half-dozen birds, a kitchen that generates daily food scraps, and no desire to keep feeding a machine that prices them out every winter. The grower who drives 30 minutes to the farm supply store hauls a bag that throws out their back and still ends up with thin-shelled eggs in January. That grower, you, the insect at the center of this whole engine is Hermetia illicens, the black soldier fly. Plain name, a fly that looks like a small black wasp, does not sting, cannot bite, and completes its entire useful life cycle in your backyard in under 3 weeks. Adult flies have no mouth parts at the adult stage, meaning they do not land on your food, do not swarm your kitchen, and do not touch your birds. They exist for one purpose: to find a warm, moist pile of organic matter, lay their eggs, and disappear. The larvae that hatch from those eggs are where the engine lives. A single black soldier fly larva converts organic kitchen waste into body mass at a rate no grain crop can match, consuming between 25 and 500 milligrams of organic material per day depending on temperature and substrate. The food-to-larva conversion ratio runs roughly 10 to 1 on wet weight. A household generating 1 to 2 kilograms of kitchen scraps per day can realistically produce between 100 and 200 grams of fresh larval mass daily, which delivers a meaningful protein supplement to a small flock, not a complete replacement on its own. That distinction matters, and it is the first thing this system teaches you to work with honestly. Here is the number that should stop you cold. Black soldier fly larvae carry between 30 and 53% crude protein by dry weight, with an amino acid profile comparable to fishmeal and soybean meal, the two most expensive ingredients in every commercial bag you have ever purchased. 200 grams of fresh larvae deliver roughly 30 grams of usable dry protein to your flock each day. A laying flock of 6 hens requires approximately 110 grams of dry protein daily to maintain peak production. Your kitchen scraps alone cover roughly 25 to 30% of that requirement. That is the equivalent of 3 to 4 commercial feed bags erased every single year and without spending a cent. The ancient proof of this system predates industrial agriculture entirely. Rural communities across sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and pre-industrial Europe all practiced passive insect cultivation alongside their poultry. Not because they read a journal, but because they watched their birds sprint toward rotting organic matter and understood the biology without a laboratory. The modern commercial feed industry displaced this practice not by improving on it, but by making grain cheap enough in the 1950s and 1960s that convenience won the economic argument. The biology never changed, only the price did. And now that price works against you. Building the bin costs nothing if you already have a yard and a kitchen. The substrate, the material you feed into the colony, is the foundation of the whole system, and a meaningful portion of it already exists in your home as waste. Black soldier fly larvae thrive on vegetable peels, coffee grounds, fruit scraps, Spoiled grain, bread crusts, eggshells, cooked rice, spent garden material, and even small amounts of meat and dairy that your worm bin cannot handle. The colony does not require clean inputs. It requires moist, decomposing organic matter, the exact thing you currently pay someone to haul away. The one rule on substrate: avoid large quantities of citrus peel and onion, which can slow larval development without killing the colony. Balanced inputs: a rough mix of wet and dry, soft and fibrous. Keep the moisture level inside the bin between 60 and 70%, which is the range where larvae process fastest. You can test moisture with your hand. A fistful of substrate should hold its shape when squeezed but release no standing liquid. That is your calibration tool. No meter required. Here's where the system scales from supplement to near replacement. Your kitchen alone is not enough volume to eliminate commercial feed entirely. To reach 50% or more of your flock's daily protein needs, you need external organic waste on top of what your household generates. One conversation with a local restaurant, a school cafeteria, or a market produce section changes the math completely. A single restaurant discarding 5 to 10 kilograms of food waste per day feeds a colony large enough to cover the majority of protein supplementation for a backyard flock of 6 to 12 birds. That waste costs nothing. In most cases, the restaurant pays to have it removed, and that's when you become the solution to their problem while solving yours. Most people make one mistake here. They start the colony on kitchen scraps alone, see partial results, and call the system a failure. The system did not fail. The volume was simply undersized for the promise. Scale the substrate input and the larval output scales with it. Check moisture every 3 to 4 days in warm weather, match your substrate volume to your flock size, and the biological engine runs at full capacity. The bin itself requires 4 materials: a food-grade plastic tote, a piece of scrap lumber or PVC pipe, a drill, and a collection bucket. No concrete, no wiring, no purchased hardware beyond a drill bit. The tote needs drainage holes at the base, 6 to 8 holes roughly the width of a pencil, and air holes near the upper rim to regulate temperature and allow adult fly access during breeding season. The self-harvesting ramp is the single mechanism that separates a system from a chore. When black soldier fly larvae reach pre-pupal stage, meaning they have reached full size and are preparing to transform, they display a hardwired behavior called negative geotaxis. They seek higher ground instinctively, climbing away from the wet substrate toward any elevated exit point. Engineering captures that behavior and turns it into automatic delivery. A ramp set at no more than 40 degrees from horizontal, lined with a rough textured surface like burlap or untreated wood, gives the larvae the traction and angle they need to walk themselves out of the bin and drop directly into a collection bucket positioned at the exit. Run a PVC pipe elbow at the top of the ramp, angled outward and downward over the collection bucket, and the larvae deliver themselves to your chickens without a single scoop. In a functioning system in a Zone 6 backyard during summer, this self-harvesting action produces fresh larvae daily from mid-morning to early afternoon, the exact window when your birds are most actively foraging. The common mistake here is building the ramp too steep, then sanding it smooth. A steep, slick surface stops larval migration entirely because the larvae require both friction and a manageable grade to climb. A 40-degree maximum angle, a rough surface, and an exit opening no wider than 2 centimeters keeps the harvest concentrated in the bucket and out of places you do not want it. Build once, adjust the angle once. After that, the system runs without you. The cold months are where most people abandon the biological engine, and that abandonment is entirely unnecessary. Black soldier fly larvae do not survive hard freezes, but the colony does not need to survive the freeze. It needs to survive in a controlled space where you already control the temperature. The indoor winter protocol requires a 5-gallon bucket, a basic heat mat sold for seed starting, the kind that costs less than a bag of premium coffee, and a small mesh screen over the air hole. Move your pre-pupal larvae indoors in late October before your first hard frost. Keep the bin between 65 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature range, larvae continue processing substrate and adding body mass throughout the cold season, though at roughly half the speed of summer production. Here is what most cold climate growers do not understand. You do not need adult flies to maintain the colony through winter. You hold the larvae in pre-pupal suspension by keeping the bin just cool enough, around 60 degrees, to pause their development without killing them, and then accelerating the temperature back to 80 degrees when you want a harvest batch. The larvae wait, You control the timing, and that's when the system becomes fully four-season rather than a warm weather supplement. Your eggs do not stop being valuable in November. Your family does not eat less protein in February. A flock fed on actively managed winter larvae maintains consistent body weight and shell quality through the cold months. Observable in your hand every time you crack an egg and see a yolk that stands firm and sits orange rather than flat and pale. That color difference is not cosmetic. It reflects the actual protein and fat density in what your family eats. Manage the colony through winter, and you protect that quality without adding to your feed bill. Now, run the honest year-end math on a flock of 6 hens. A household running its kitchen scraps alone through a single black soldier fly colony covers roughly 25 to 30% of the flock's daily protein requirement, consistently across the warm season at zero cost. That alone eliminates the equivalent of roughly 3 commercial feed bags per year. The grower who adds one external organic waste source, a restaurant, a neighbor's kitchen, a produce stand, doubles or triples that output, pushing protein coverage past 50% across the 210 days of the active warm season in a zone 5 to 7 climate. To reach full protein replacement, the point where the commercial bag disappears entirely from your budget, the system requires both outdoor warm season production and the indoor winter protocol running in parallel, fed by a consistent volume of external substrate beyond what one household alone generates. That is not a compromise. It is the architecture of the system. The grower who understands this builds in scale from the start, rather than expecting one bucket to carry the weight of an entire flock's protein needs. The grain-based energy fraction of the diet, corn, wheat, barley scratch, remains separate from the protein engine and can be sourced locally from grain farmers or feed mills at bulk prices well below retail. The protein engine handles the expensive fraction. The scratch handles the rest. Together, they close the financial loop the commercial bag was designed to keep open forever. The surplus larvae the colony generates beyond what your flock consumes in peak production, months trade at prices comparable to a specialty grocery item per pound among neighboring backyard keepers, fishing enthusiasts, and reptile owners. The colony closes the loop the coop opens. Your hens produce waste that feeds the substrate feeds the larvae feed the hens, and the cycle generates surplus at every turn. Start today with a single 5-gallon bucket, a handful of kitchen scraps, and a shaded corner of your yard. The colony establishes in under 2 weeks once the temperature holds above 60 degrees Fahrenheit. One bucket becomes one system. One external waste source turns that system into a protein engine that steadily dismantles your feed bill, bag by bag, season by season. Subscribe because the next stage of this system, integrating the larval castings back into your garden soil, only makes sense once this protein engine is already running. Grow the food. Own the cycle. Feed no machine that does not feed you back.